Has peculiar challenges. On one hand, it needs to fix twin deficits, and on the other, growth needs to be revived. What are your thoughts?
Yes, it's a difficult dilemma they're in, and these challenges have been around for a while. So the issues of the budget deficit, which is quite wide already, the current account deficit is wide and growth is slowing, is a picture that is not very comfortable from both a policymaker's standpoint. So I think this is why there has been so much attention focused on the structural reform process in terms of both economic reforms, in terms of improving the economy's competitiveness, but also in terms of fiscal consolidation in order to bring in the budget deficit.
India's FM has been quite confident and adamant that the current year's fiscal deficit will not breach 5.3%, and next year's deficit will be around 4.8%. Do you think that this is achievable?
Well, all deficits to be our targets are always achievable. I guess the question comes down to a matter of willpower and the willingness to implement the measures that are needed to meet the target. As for the fiscal year 13 deficit, we're already 9 months into the year in terms of the data that's been released. And so far the data suggests that it's going to be a close call in terms of whether they can meet the target of 5.3% of GDP. Much will depend on divestments, government sales of assets, and two, in terms of subsidies, what they do in terms of the subsidy sharing mechanism. So we'll have to wait and see. As far as next year, it's a bit too early. Obviously, we're waiting for the budget at the end of this month on February the 28th to get an idea of the type of measures the government will put in place to meet the target of 4.8%. But obviously, a lot will also depend on just the general growth prospects.
To attain these targets, India needs to cut the subsidy burden substantially. Do you think India has the political will to do that, considering 2014 is election year? Also, India in the past has had patchy performances on policy implementations. Do you see political risks taking over economics?
Yeah, very good questions, and they're both very difficult to answer. Obviously, political will is very difficult to assess. I mean, if you look at India's recent track record going back to the last general election back in 2009, the budget did widen in advance of general elections, but obviously it was a difficult time back there in terms of the global financial crisis. And obviously when it comes down to to subsidies, reducing those subsidies and the overall structure of the budget, a lot does depend on politics, and India does have a complicated political process in terms of how the government or the ruling UNP deals with its coalition partners.